Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another of our daily devotions. Apologies, by the way, for not having a devotional put up on Monday. Life's got very busy over the past few weeks, but I hope that you benefit from this devotional today. We were looking at Psalm 14, where the psalmist says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." And we began to think about how foolish it is for anyone to deny the existence of God, especially given the huge amount of evidence that there is, even in nature itself, to prove that there is a creator behind the creation. This morning, we want to delve a little deeper into it, and I want to draw your attention to the fact that David identifies this denial of God as being in the person's heart rather than in their mind. In other words, the God denying man that David primarily has in mind here is the man who is denying God in his heart. It doesn't exclude the intellectual atheist, the atheist who thinks there is no God and who thinks he has good intellectual reasons for denying the existence of God, and that would include men like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris. It would also include people like Steve Jobs and even Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame. It's not such people that the psalmist primarily has in mind here. Rather, he's thinking of people who are denying God in their heart. What does that mean? Well, it's not so much an intellectual question as far as these people are concerned. It's more a moral question. They don't want God to exist, so they act as though he doesn't exist. This person that the psalmist has in mind is someone who wants to live as though there is no God. And that is, in fact, how he or she chooses to live life. No God, no standards other than my own. And so, no accountability outside of themselves. Certainly, no one to whom I have to answer. And most definitely, as far as they're concerned, no day of judgment. The Apostle John speaks of such an attitude in John chapter 3 and verse 20 of his Gospel. He says, "Everyone who practices evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed." Now, of course, light in the Bible speaks primarily of God. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. Light speaks of Jesus Christ. "I am the light of the world." Light speaks of the Bible. The Bible is described as a lamp unto our feet, a light unto our path. But they don't want light. They prefer darkness. They don't want God. Why? Because any thought of God exposes their sin. And they don't want to see the way they live as being sinful or being wrong. However, it's also possible to say in one's mind there is a God, and yet to deny it in one's heart. And what I mean by that is this: to believe there is a God, and yet to live as though he's not there. Yes, non-Christians can say, "I believe in God," but that belief has very little, if any, impact on the way a non-Christian lives. I know many non-Christians who believe in God, but it doesn't make any bit of difference to their life. But here's the thing, and I think this is very challenging. Christians can say, "I believe in God." Christians can say, "I trust in God." And yet, whenever they find themselves in times of trials, whenever they find trouble coming into their life, whenever they are unexpectedly bereaved, or when they are facing some critical illness, they can run about like headless chickens, as we say. In other words, they become filled with fear, with anxiety. They get depressed. In other words, They say there is a God, but they are acting as though God's not there, as though God has lost all control of things, when in actual fact, they should be living in the knowledge of God's existence and of God's control over their lives. So it's very easy to read Psalm 14 and for the psalmist to say, the fool has said in his heart there is no God, and to think that this only applies to atheists and non-Christians. It can actually apply to Christians. We say there is a God in our mind, but we can act as though there is no God. Our hearts can deny God. The way we respond to life's tests can shout out, no God. Friends, let us beware of confessing God with our minds and yet denying Him with our lives, our hearts. It's the fool who says there is no God. And when we face trials, and when hardships come, and when we lost loved ones, the God in whom we believe is still there and is still very much in control of all that's happening in your life and my life. May God help us to think these things through, and may He be with you as you go into the day. Every blessing.